Laughter is great medicine. Have you seen on Facebook the kindergartner who's hanging over his chair during e-learning, or the sign on the door that says e-learning in progress, enter only with wine or the ability to teach math? Or even the parent who's asking not to be judged because their kids are outside playing on their field trip. We are seeing such high levels of anxiety with both educators and families as they figure out, how do we navigate this whole e-learning setup or hybrid learning setup or face-to-face setup with restrictions? How do we do it? As I thought more about this high level of anxiety, I began to see a common thread that existed long before COVID. COVID may have brought it to the forefront, but it existed long before COVID. And there seems to be this mingling or a great deal of fear amongst parents about ruining their children. I like to refer to it as the perfect parent syndrome. Even though I've been in early education for many years, I vividly remember feeling completely overwhelmed when our first child was born. It was such a responsibility. I wasn't sure I could do it, even with knowledge. But now I have hindsight, because I have 2 adult children, to realize that the success of our children was not dependent on our perfect parenting. I'm sure our children will let you go that neither my husband nor I were perfect parents, whatever that means. You may have also read about something called helicopter parenting that seems to be happening today, and what that brings to the table. I actually looked up the definition, and it said this: parents who take overprotective or excessive interest in the life of their child or children. I remember teacher Tom telling us that 80% of the sentences adults say to children involve commands, telling them what to do. There's this unwritten pressure to avoid conflict and failure. And why is this so? Wonder what happens when we continually rescue children from conflict and failure. I think Lenore Skenazy said it well. When we treat children as fragile, we get fragile children. We unconsciously send a message that says, we don't believe the child is a competent being. I'm sure I could say, guilty as charged. But it's not about blaming myself or feeling guilty as a parent. It's about using conflict and failure to learn and grow. Oops is now a positive in my life, which I think will translate to the children around me. So I've been challenging myself to really step back and observe and listen to children that are involved in conflict or have experienced failure. I'm trying to avoid rushing in to rescue, solve the problem, or happy them up. It would be much quicker, but I'm trying to avoid that. And you know what I find? It's amazing how competent children can be when adults stop fixing things for them. Through attending that Play First Summit that I've talked about to some of you, I met an educator from New Zealand named Maggie Dent. Maggie Dent is known as the Queen of Common Sense. She said something that really struck me. What children need hasn't changed. It's just the world around them has changed. The basics still matter. You don't have to be a perfect parent to raise a child who will not only make you proud, but children who will step out in the world, take it on, and thrive. There is no one-size parenting fits all, or educating for that matter. As Becky Bailey, the co-founder of Conscious Discipline, puts it, children want to know 3 things. Number 1, am I loved? Number 2, do I belong? And number 3, can I learn? This can only happen when we answer yes to those questions. Children have to be able to trust the adults that are caring for them in order to learn. I'm going to end this reflection with a story about a colleague and a friend of mine who's currently teaching kindergarten in an e-learning situation. She told me, and I'm paraphrasing, so this isn't her exact words, but basically that she took all of her knowledge of kindergartners over the years and decided that she had to prioritize relationships with the children and families if she could do the best possible job in this crazy unknown year. She spent the first week of kindergarten doing one-on-one meets with the student and the adults. She listened to what the children liked. She listened how the families were handling or not handling the e-learning and COVID. As she built a relationship, in the same hour, she was actually able to get a baseline assessment of children that may have taken weeks in our regular setting. She started slowly in her teaching with just a few choices until students and caregivers had the support to feel a little less overwhelmed. She gave families grace, and she asked for grace from families. She told the families that the most important part of e-learning was to stay in communication with her so she could support both the student and the caregivers. Wow, what wisdom. I'm so curious to see how this time up front, given to the basics, will play out the rest of the year. So today, I hope you'll join me in this commitment to abandon the perfect parent syndrome and engage in being the parent you need to be for your family. I'm going to leave you with a final quote from somebody named Jill Churchill, and she says, "There is no way to be a perfect parent, but there are a million ways to be a good parent. So go do it."